Moadim l'simcha. This Shabbat, which is the seventh day of Pesach, we will read the Song of the Sea from the Torah in synagogue. As the Israelites sang to God within the first verse of this song, which is the first example of human-authored poetry in the Torah, they, introducing their celebration of God's power and justice and his love, they sang all together, Ze Eli ve'anvehu. This is my God, and I will praise him. On this verse, Rabbi Eliezer, in the Mechilta de Rabbi Ishmael, comments, from where do we know that a maidservant beheld at the Sea of Reeds what was not beheld by Isaiah and Ezekiel? As it's written in the prophet Hosea, Uviyad Nevi'im Adameh. I used similes by means of the prophets, and in the prophet Ezekiel, Niftachu hashamayim ve'ereh maros Elokim. The heavens opened, and I saw visions of God. So Hosea speaks of God speaking in metaphor, similes to the prophets, and Ezekiel speaks of seeing visions of God. But at the Sea of Reeds, every single Jew said, this is my God, not this is a metaphor for my God, or this is a simile for my God, or this is a vision of God, but this in front of me is God, God's self. Where the great prophets whose names were lent to books of our Holy Bible beheld visions that represented some facet of God, or were given similes which required deciphering. Every Israelite at the sea, from the most exalted prince to the lowliest servant woman, saw God in such a clear way that they could say, this is my God. They had no need for poetic similes, philosophical arguments, or esoteric mysticism. They simply perceived God directly with their own faculties, with absolute clarity. What is it that allowed an ordinary Israelite at the sea to perceive God more clearly than the greatest prophets of subsequent generations? And moreover, why is it Davka here at the sea that this generation achieved the apex of prophecy, and not a few weeks later at Sinai, when God revealed himself to them on the mountain and gave them his Torah? We can begin to answer that question by comparing the two Megillot that are read on Pesach and Shavuot. This Shabbat in Shul, we will read Shir Hashirim, the Song of Songs, which is a passionate, erotic love poem describing the love between a man and a woman as a metaphor for that love between God and the Israelite people. The poem opens, "Oh, that he would kiss me with his lips." But the love of Israel for God is not just a matter of sensual desire. Throughout Shir HaShirim, the poem expresses a wild, reckless willingness to abandon oneself, flout conventions, and risk everything, only to be close to the beloved. Moshcheni acharecha narutza. Draw me after you. Let us run. Heviani Amelech Chadarav. The king has brought me to his chambers. These are words describing not only intimacy, but the feeling of one who is willing to follow her beloved anywhere so long as she can be close to him. This is a poem about falling in love, with all the beauty and pain and recklessness and foolishness of that. And it is this sense of passion that best describes Israel's relationship with God when we left Egypt. Now, in a little over 6 weeks on Shavuot, when we commemorate the revelation at Sinai, we will read Megillat Ruth, which is a story not about falling in love, but about marriage, where Shir HaShirim speaks about passion and sensuality and desire, but hardly mentions marriage. Ruth is taken up entirely with the topic of marriage. Instead of speaking about desire or adoration, Ruth focuses on commitment, kindness, protection. Ruth is a celebration of covenantal relationship, as appropriate to the holiday when we receive the Torah, as Shir HaShirim's passion is to the holiday of our liberation. Where marriage, as we see in Megillat Ruth, amounts to finding one's footing, achieving the security of mutual commitment. Falling in love, as it is described in Shir HaShirim, is about the opposite, losing one's bearings and a willingness to abandon all for the sake of the beloved. Our relationship with God exists between these two poles of passion and commitment. Like a healthy human partnership, we need both commitment and passion in our relationship with God. And ideally, the terms of the sacred covenant of our commitment to the mitzvot and to Torah provide a structure within which our passion can live and grow. Too often, though, as Orthodox Jews, we tend to emphasize the commitment and the rules and all the practical details of the acts of service we perform as an expression of that commitment, to the detriment of the wild, unbridled, passionate love of God. Rabbi Menachem Froman cites the tradition that the sin of the first human beings was not so much that they ate of the tree of knowledge, but that they ate of the tree of knowledge before eating from the tree of life. Had they eaten first from the tree of life, then the tree of knowledge would have been permitted to them. Rav Froman then, in his classically iconoclastic style, suggests that while the tree of life represents love of God, the tree of knowledge represents halacha, Torah, Jewish law. And he argues that those of us who focus on law and the details of the mitzvot without first cultivating a passionate love for the one who gave us those laws are repeating the sin of Adam HaRishon. To mix our metaphors, to dedicate ourselves to the observance of halacha, Jewish law, without love or passion is to treat a relationship with God like a marriage of convenience, a mere economic transactional partnership. God forbid. As Rabbi Eliezer pointed out to us, it was not at Sinai, through the receiving all the rules of the Torah, that we achieved our clearest and most direct experience of revelation. Rather, it was in the passion of the Exodus, specifically the experience of walking through the parted sea. What higher example is there of the willingness to abandon everything for the love of God than the Israelites' willingness to walk into the depths of the sea, not knowing what lay on the other side, knowing only that this was where God was calling them. Draw me after you. Let us run. To see God clearly, to see any truth clearly, we have to be willing to let go of preconceptions, to leave behind the landmarks that helped us orient ourselves in space, and to follow the truth wherever it may lead us, even into the depths of the sea. The commitment of your people are my people, and your God is my God, is necessary and beautiful. But it is only in the abandon of draw me after you, let us run, that we come to know God. May we all be inspired this Pesach to connect to Shir HaShirim's sense of passion, desire, and danger. The willingness to let go of our preconceptions and abandon ourselves to the passionate pursuit of God's love. Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach.